The sun was a white disk high in the cloudless sky, baking the hard-packed earth of the yard. Elias drove a nail into a loose plank on the corral fence, the sound sharp and solitary in the afternoon quiet. He was a man who moved without wasted motion, his hands broad and darkened by weather. The rhythm of his work was the only conversation he had known for a long time. A dust cloud appeared down the long track from the main road. He paused, hammer in hand, and watched. It was not a wagon. It was a lone figure walking, and walking slow. He waited, his shadow pooling at his boots. As the figure drew closer, the details resolved into a shape that made his breath catch in a way it hadn't in years. A woman. And she was with child, far along. Clara's every step was an effort. The dust coated her worn shoes, her simple dress. Her face was pale beneath the grime, etched with a fatigue so deep it looked carved. She lifted her eyes from the ground and saw the ranch house, then the man standing silent beside the fence. Her steps faltered for a heartbeat, a flicker of raw fear crossing her face. This was the last name on a list she'd memorized. A cousin of a distant relation, a man she knew only by the single letter she carried crumpled in her pocket. There was nowhere else to walk to. Elias watched her approach the porch steps. He saw the way her hand pressed against the small of her back, the tremble in her legs as she stopped. He saw the desperate hope warring with the expectation of a closed door in her tired eyes. He said nothing. He placed his hammer carefully on the fence post and walked toward the house. He did not look at her face as he passed, but at the swell of her belly under the faded cloth. He opened the front door, a soft creak of hinges, and stood aside. It was not an invitation spoken, but one enacted. Clara stared at the dark rectangle of the doorway, then at his impassive profile. She climbed the single step, her body heavy and awkward, and crossed the threshold into the cool, dim interior. He pointed to a sturdy chair by the empty hearth. "Sit," he said, the word rough from disuse. He went to the pump at the sink and worked the handle. He filled a tin cup with cool water and brought it to her. His movements were deliberate, offering no comfort beyond the practical. She drank, her hands shaking so the water trembled. He turned and went back outside. Clara sat, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. She heard the scrape of wood, then the solid, repetitive thud of his hammer starting again. It was not on the fence. Peering through the open door, she saw him dragging long, raw planks from the lean-to shed toward the side of the house. By the next morning, the gossip had reached town. Mrs. Gable saw it from her buggy on the road, the lone pregnant girl on Elias Holt's porch. By supper time, it was all anyone discussed at the Mercantile. A fallen woman, they said. A scandal sent packing from somewhere back east. What on earth was that quiet, grieving rancher thinking, taking in such a creature? The speculation was a current that flowed around the isolated ranch, but it did not touch the work happening there. Elias worked from first light until the last color faded from the sky. He framed a simple, square addition off the kitchen wall. He fitted the planks, cut a window opening, hung a door. He asked no questions. He required no story. His silence was not a judgment, but a foundation. Each strike of the hammer was a statement more solid than words. It said she could stay. It said the child would have a roof. Clara watched from the kitchen window, her hands resting on the curve of her stomach. The room, raw timber and clean lines, took shape before her eyes. It was the first purely good thing she had seen in months. The fear that had been a constant companion began, slowly, to loosen its grip. She was seen, not as a disgrace, but as a person who needed a room, and the man with the sad, quiet eyes was building one. The months settled into a gentle rhythm, with Clara waking each morning to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of birds chirping outside her window. Elias would leave her meals on a wooden tray by the door, the plate covered with a clean cloth to keep it warm. A small act of kindness that she had grown to appreciate. The food was always simple, yet satisfying, a testament to Elias's practical and selfless nature. He never knocked, never waited for thanks, simply coming and going with a quiet efficiency that Clara found comforting. As she ate, Clara would stare out the window, watching the sun rise over the rolling hills, the sky painted with hues of pink and orange. The landscape was vast and empty, yet she felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging that she had not felt in a long time. Elias's presence was a big part of that, his quiet kindness and unwavering devotion a balm to her weary soul. She felt seen, heard, and understood in a way that she had not experienced before, a feeling that was both comforting and unsettling. The porch became their meeting place, a spot where they could sit in comfortable silence and watch the world go by. After supper, Clara would step outside and find Elias already there, his boots resting on the bottom rail, his gaze fixed on the distant hills. The crickets would fill the silence, and the stars would come out one by one, creating a sense of magic, a sense of wonder that Clara had not felt in years. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees, the creak of the old wooden chair, and the distant howl of a coyote all blended together to create a sense of peace, a sense of belonging that Clara had been searching for. One night, a cold wind swept across the prairie, and Clara shivered, wrapping her arms around herself, trying not to let him notice. Elias stood without a word, disappeared inside, and returned with a wool blanket, which he draped over her shoulders, his hands lingering for a moment longer than necessary. She looked up at him, and in the dim light from the window, she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch, a spark of kindness, of compassion, of quiet devotion. The weeks passed, and the baby grew, Clara feeling the kicks at night, small movements that reminded her she was not alone in her body. She wondered if Elias could tell, if he noticed the way she sometimes pressed a hand to her stomach, a gesture that had become a habit. He never looked at her differently, never made her feel like a burden, his expression always the same, a mask of quiet kindness that hid his true feelings. One evening, as the sun bled orange and pink across the sky, Clara found herself speaking without planning to, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was afraid you would turn me away," she said, the words hanging in the air like a challenge. Elias did not turn to look at her, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his jaw working slowly, as if he was considering his response. "I was afraid you would leave," he said, his voice low and rough, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. The words hung in the air between them, simple and honest, a promise of sorts, a promise that he would be there for her, no matter what. Clara felt something shift inside her chest, a crack in the wall she had built around her heart, a sense of hope that she had not felt in a long time. As she looked at Elias, she saw a glimmer of a smile, a small, gentle smile that spoke volumes about his heart, and she knew that she would never forget this moment, this feeling of being seen, of being heard, of being understood. In that moment, Clara felt a sense of connection to Elias that she had not felt before, a sense of understanding that went beyond words. She realized that he was not just a kind stranger, but a complex and multifaceted person with his own thoughts and feelings. And as she looked into his eyes, she saw a deep sense of sadness, a sense of loss that he had not shared with her before. But in that moment, she also saw a sense of hope, a sense of possibility that she had not seen in a long time. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers, and the sound of crickets provided a soothing background melody, as if nature itself was conspiring to bring them closer together. Clara felt a sense of peace wash over her, a sense of belonging that she had been searching for, and she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The 9th month had finally arrived, and with it, the unexpected day of labor. Clara had been preparing herself for this moment, but nothing could have truly readied her for the rush of emotions that came with it. As the first contractions began, she felt a sense of panic wash over her, but it was quickly calmed by the steady presence of Elias. He had been waiting for this moment, silently and patiently, and now he sprang into action with a calm and collected demeanor that reassured Clara. As the hours passed, Clara's contractions grew stronger and closer together, and Elias proved himself to be a rock, supporting her through each wave of pain. He had called for the help of a neighbor woman, Mrs. Jenkins, who had experience with childbirth, and together they worked to bring Clara's babies into the world. Mrs. Jenkins was a stout woman with gray hair pulled tight into a bun and hands that had delivered half the babies in the county. She moved with practiced efficiency, laying out clean cloths and a pair of scissors. She spoke in low, firm tones, telling Clara when to push and when to rest. Elias stood at Clara's side, holding her hand, his thumb tracing slow circles on her palm. He did not flinch when Clara squeezed hard enough to leave marks. The first baby was a boy, small but strong, with a tuft of dark hair. The second was a girl, even smaller, with eyes that seemed to already be searching the room. Clara held them both, her arms trembling from exhaustion and relief. Mrs. Jenkins cleaned up quietly, then slipped out the door with a promise to return in the morning. The cabin fell silent, except for the soft breathing of the twins. As she gazed at them, tears of joy streaming down her face, Elias finally spoke, his voice low and gentle. "Let me be a father to them," he said. "Let me love and care for them as my own." Clara's heart swelled as she looked at Elias. She saw the deep lines etched into his face, the lines of a man who had known hardship and sorrow, but also the lines of a man who had known patience and love. In that moment, she knew that she had found not just a home, but a family, built on those very foundations. As she nodded, a small, barely perceptible movement, Elias's face lit up with a warm and gentle smile. He reached out, taking the twins from her arms, cradling them in his own. He held them like he had been doing it his whole life, one in each arm, his large hands cupping their tiny heads. He looked down at them, and for a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked up at Clara, and his eyes were wet. She had never seen him cry before. He did not say thank you, but she felt it in the way he held her children, in the way his shoulders loosened, in the way he finally let himself hope. Clara watched Elias, his face a picture of serene happiness. She reached out and placed her hand on his arm, and he leaned into her touch. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window pane. But inside the cabin, there was only warmth. Elias began to rock the twins, a slow and gentle motion. The room was filled with the sound of their soft cooing and the creak of the old wooden rocking chair. Clara closed her eyes, listening to the rhythm of the chair, the soft breathing of her children, the steady heartbeat of the man who had built a room and waited. As the rocking continued, Clara felt her eyelids growing heavy, her body relaxing into the warmth of the moment. She knew that she would never forget this feeling, this sense of peace and contentment that had washed over her. She knew that she had found her forever with this quiet, stoic man and their two perfect little babies. The world outside receded, and all that was left was the gentle rocking, the soft cooing, and the warm, golden light of the setting sun. Clara's heart was full, and she knew that she would never be alone again, that she had found a love that would last a lifetime, a love that would rock her and her children into a bright and beautiful future.